about. Started in this was a hobby. I had an N scale layout in my cellar. Fellow named Mike Carnaby. I don't know if you fellas know Carnaby, but there was Neil Carnaby. Now there's Norman, I guess, just grown up. They owned a model, N scale models train store in Hampton, New Hampshire. Well, I used to get down there and talk to him. Mike Carnaby, the dad, is Bruce. He said, "You do model boats." He says, "Why don't you do a harbor in your layout?" I said, "Well, Mike, that's why I'm doing a layout, to do a harbor." I said, "I don't care about the trains." I said, "I want boats on my harbor." So Mike said, "Well, I'm gonna help you out. I'm gonna do your wiring for you and lay your track out for you." And so we became buddies. And one day he came to the house and I was working on a model in wood from a drawing. And I'm gonna put that in my layout, Mike. And Mike said, "No, yeah, that's a good idea." He said, "Why don't you make a urethane mold of that and make a whole bunch of them, and we'll give you a corner of the table at the Big E next year, and you can sell those." "Oh, Mike, I don't want to do business." I said, "I own a company." I said, I got Bruce, do it." I made up 50 of them, brought them to the Big E, resin casting. This is the square bow version of it, which actually sells better than pointed bow. Brought them to the Big E, had about this much space, and I told Neil, "I'll give you 35%. Okay. By 10 o'clock, they were gone. Geez, there's something here. I said, "I go to the bank, I put something in, I get 0.0002% on $10. I said, I'm gonna make some more of these." So I did. And Mike Carnaby was a big, he gave me a lot of inspiration. Mike came to the house. I bought a kit that had been long out of production from Crow River. I bought the rights to it. It was called the Exeter tug. I'll pass it around. I trust you, gentlemen. It's a beautiful little kit, beautiful model. They kind of, Crow River, Leo Terrian, and George Barrett and Steve Cryan designed that kit many, many years ago. Crow River produced it for about 10 years, sold a lot of them, put it in the bench for 10 years, and then came out with it and said, "Bruce, do you want to buy that?" I said, "I'll give you $1,000 for the kit." I gave them $1,000 for the rights to the kit, bought the molds that they had. I have sold to date over 800 of those at $100 a piece, over the years. So I know I've made my money back. And it's a fantastic boat. It's gone from a plaster hull to a resin hull. It's gone from a solid hull to a hollow hull. Now it's gone from a resin superstructure to a laser cut wood superstructure. We've eliminated a lot of the brass work that was in it, made the kit a lot easier to build. That's a quick story on that boat. But what I want to talk about first is that's how we got into business anyway, with a guy named Mike Carnaby. From there, I tied in with Leo at Crow River, Leo, who designed that tug. And from there, I became friends with a fellow down in Maine, George Barrett. And George was going in the other direction in the kit business. He didn't want to do business. So George said, "Bruce, why don't you buy 4 of my kits out?" I did. I gave him $3,000 and I bought his kits. And I bought all the rights to them and I bought the tools and so on and so forth. So that gave me an automobile car ferry. It gave me a dragger. It gave me, I think 2 other models. I forget what they were now. And I redesigned them and put them out for sale to the model railroad people. Let's see. I'm gonna read this a little bit because I want to make sure I don't go over my time. The people who were probably the most gave us the most inspiration and help over the years is Sheepscot, which is George Barrett, Sylvan, which is out of Canada, Claire Gilbert. Claire is probably one of the best model designers that there is. And we sell a lot of Claire's kits, a lot of Claire kits on our website. Don't know Frenchman River, but he's one of the fellas that are in the business. Walters is in it a little bit. They do sell a lot of Sylvan kits as well. We did sell in Walters for many years. What I want to get to now though is how do we make these kits? Well, I'm going to pass this around. This is, first of all, the hull for the boat I'm going to talk about. This was made from drawings in a book. The book was written by a fellow named Dynamite Payson in Maine. Dynamite no longer with us, but he was one heck of a model maker. And he wrote books and he told us how to make models. And I took his drawings and I dropped it to 1/87th scale on a copying machine. And I drew out all the patterns and I made this what they call a sandwich method, which is a horizontal layer. You just kept putting a piece of wood on and gluing it. And you take the patterns, you go around, you take the file and you file it. So this is the first model that I truly built from scratch. That's the original pattern that I built way back. That's the first kit that we ever made alone. These are the results of that. This is the kit. I'll take that, I'll make it easier for you. These are the parts that we make from the urethane molds that we make from that pattern right there. One of the key things I want to tell you about the models that we do sell, you don't have to worry about making the hulls. The hull is where the work is. I couldn't sit down and quickly make a hull. Okay, I just couldn't do it. And I've made a lot of hulls. Probably that hull took me 6 months, a couple hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week to build that hull right there. It's just very time consuming. You got to draw patterns, you've got to make patterns, there's just a lot to it. Model railroad people are not going to stop and make a hull. We understood that right up front. So we said, we're going to give kits out there that the hulls are totally made. All the model railroader person has to do is build a superstructure. And the superstructure on those kits are nothing more than building any building structure that you have. So we've eliminated 90% of the work of a model boat. This is the rubber mold that's made from the hull that you're handling right there. The other parts in the kit, I'm just going to pass a couple of these around. All the original parts are made by hand. That is the back of the cabin. Each part was made by hand. This is the walls. That's the pattern, and that's the rubber mold. Basically, it's an open pour. Just pour resin into the mold, scrape it down, pop them off, clean them up a little bit, and I've got parts to a kit. The medium in all of the hulls is resin. It's urethane molds with a resin. We use Reynolds Advance. We use what they call a product called Smooth On. And I'll tell you that I've used a lot of resins. I think Reynolds Advance has got the best in the market. It is very forgiving. You can pour 1 ounce of it. You can pour a pound of it. Whatever will fit in your mold. It doesn't shrink. It has longevity. It paints well. It receives paint well. Doesn't wear out my mold like some of the other resins do. The heat factor is less from Reynolds Advance than it is from many of the other resins. Anybody can buy it. You can buy it in a little package. You can buy it in 5-gallon pail. You can buy it in a 55-gallon drum. We use what we call Smooth Cast 300 or 305. Smooth Cast 300 is what I use daily in the shop. It's a quick set, very quick. 305 allows you a longer set, which allows you to put the part into a vacuum tank to draw the air out. So if I'm doing parts that are very small, I'll use 305 because I want to put them through actually, it's not a vacuum tank, it's a pressure tank. The urethane goes in a vacuum tank. The parts go in a pressure tank. The force forces the resin into the mold and pumps the air out. I do that when I'm doing really fine parts. We don't do a lot of that. We'll do that for a while in a part, then we'll turn around and say, no, give this to somebody, have them make it up in metal. We're going to spin cast it. It's quicker. It's a lot cheaper. Today, 3D drawing.
the task 4 is even takes forever to cure, but it's so strong, it's unbelievable.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. We use Molmax 40 and Molstar 15 for our urethane. This is all available for you here in the writing. I've tried a lot of different urethanes. Again, I lean with, I think I learned a lot from Claire Gilbert up in Sylvan. Claire went through the same thing. He gave me a lot of advice over a period of time. I learned a lot from George Barrett. Dave Frary spent a lot of time talking about this thing of resin and so on and so forth. And I kind of find that after all these conversations and all these years, I'm not leaving Reynolds Advance. I'm going to stay with them on their resin. The reason I'm taking time to talk to you about this is because there's no reason why everybody in this room can't have an idea in their head, create that once, the one patent, and make that part a multiple times. It's so simple to do. There's just nothing to it. You can make mistakes. If you watch me in the shop pouring these chemicals together, well, I got a glass here and I got a glass here, plastic cup. Oh, I got a line here. It's about the same size as the line over here, about the same height. I pour, I dump, I mix. I don't watch it. And I don't use clean cups all the time. I don't use clean glasses all the time. What I'm saying to you is very, very, very forgiving when you're working with resin. Resin has been our whole business. Okay. We're gonna see each one of us will draw our inspiration from sources that we interact with throughout our lives. In this particular subject, it may be desired to reach and model full transportation loop of goods and passengers. What I'm going to talk about right now is what's the justification of model railroading and the connection to the marine vessel business. The book on that is called Where the Rails Meet the Sea. This book you all ought to have. This will give you a different view on where marine railroad ties in with nautical railroad. Okay. There's a lot written about it. This is one of the best books that you can buy. I think you can still get it. I'm pretty sure you can. There's a quick story about the railroad from Canada coming into the New England states. Canada did not have a rail line from the St. Lawrence Seaway into New England at all. This is going back in, I think, the late 1800s. There was a lawyer in Boston, young lawyer, and he heard that they were thinking about putting this rail line in because the St. Lawrence Seaway continually froze up in the wintertime, and it did not allow the freight to go to England. It was not good for business. This lawyer heard that there were some conversations going on. Then there was a second gentleman in Portland, Maine that heard about it. He was a lawyer as well. Well, I have a lot of respect for lawyers, and these were hard-working lawyers, the two of them. They didn't get together, but they certainly went to Quebec, and they started talking about this railroad with the people in Canada. And the Canada says, no, I tell you what, we'll listen to both of you, but we're going to Boston with this thing. We're going right down to the hub of the transportation and the distribution and the manufacturing. We're going to the heart of it, right to Boston. So the guy from Portland, Maine, he kind of didn't know what to do about it. He said, I kind of lost this, and got thinking about it. He went home and he says, you know, he says, the distance from Portland, Maine to England is shorter than the distance from Boston to England. And he went back up to Canada and he said those words to the folks. He said, I'm going to save you this amount of time, this amount of money over the next 100 years. You should come to Portland, Maine. And they did. The first rail in the United States to carry the freight that was being carried in the St. Lawrence Seaway went to Portland, Maine. And that's just a story. And the reason I'm telling this story is I want to tell you that the marine industry at that point in time and the connection with the railroad industry at that point in time was very, very important. As a matter of fact, many of the railroads were owned by the maritime barons, and many of the shipping companies were owned by the railroad barons. I don't know if that's the case today or not. The whole industry has changed, obviously, because of the container shipping. The railroad and the marine industry are married like this. It's just, you can't separate it, and you probably never will be able to. So I don't know if I'm running out of time or not here. What's the?
Keep going.
Keep going. Yeah. I am going kind of fast here because I know we're kind of short on time. I just wanted to give you a picture of where we came from, what and how we manufacture, what's our justification in the industry. And I think we can justify that by what's happening today with the container industry. Not necessarily everybody's happy with them today. This event down in Rhode Island, not Rhode Island, Baltimore was a tragic thing. I hope we don't see more of that. But as we know, we've had both maritime and rail problems in our nation for a long time, and we always will, as long as we're trying to do good things and keep businesses running. We just, I think that's all I'm going to give you. Do you have any questions? I need some questions up here.
What scales do you work in?
Okay, N scale, HO, and quarter inch. Yeah, O scale. We don't do much in the O scale. We tried. We started off at N scale, I guess, originally. That's where I was. Went to HO real quick. We went to that show and saw all the HO buyers picking up those badges. Didn't take long to figure that one out. So HO, what we have tried to do is where we had an HO boat, to have an N scale boat. We tried that on, and in many cases it worked, which was good. I want to show you one other boat. That's a New England boat. That is a Menhaden steamer. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. That's a converted Menhaden steamer. If I was to do this Menhaden steamer to scale, it would be about this long right now. This wasn't going to go on somebody's layout. But they did take the boats and they converted them. So I took the liberty to convert the size as well. So now this fits on most any HO layout. The Menhaden steamer was a big player in the industry of New England all the way down south. In this book right here, it gives you a good story, and that's from that book I designed this kit.
So
Very
what time frame that?
Yeah.
This is going late 1800s, 1930s, very strong down in, I'd say you probably saw 300 or 400 of them in Long Island Sound area, down the river area, then south. There are two known boats left that I know of right now. They were built out of wood. When the Menhaden market dried up, they took them and they turned them into passenger ferries, freighters, just about anything they could make use of. One of the things about the boating industry back in the 1800s was that if a family owned boats, they might only own two boats. And with that boat, they'd carry manure up the river from Long Island Sound. The same boat in the spring, they'd carry manure and produce. And then another time they might go with pigs, manure, and produce on that boat. And they'd go up, sell, buy, they call them buy boats. This was the case down south as well. This is a buy boat down south. This is a sardine carrier up here. Well, what happened, you know, when you get the government involved in things, they do help a lot, you know. And here, the government said, well, we shouldn't have manure on the same boat. We got produce. So, you know, the fellow that owned two boats got 5 sons, and he's got to keep them busy, so he stayed in business. So now they got 5 boats because they got a manure boat, they got a watermelon boat, they got a fishing boat, and now maybe they're going to have a freight boat. So now they got maybe 4 or 5 boats where they had 2. Didn't affect the cost any, I'm sure. Well, that's what happened. That's what happened with all of these boats. These boats that were used for multiple purposes, now the government said you can only use these boats for certain things. You can only be licensed for certain things. This didn't help the industry. Didn't help the industry at all. It may have helped our longevity of life, not mixing this manure with the food, but it didn't help the industry. Let's see, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, are all of your models, waterline products?
No, we do full hull. Matter of fact, now that you ask that. This is the sardine carrier in full hull. That's this boat in full hull. Most every boat that we do, we've tried to produce a full hull kit. The reason that comes about is when we designed the kit. Or when I designed the kit originally, I designed the kit from drawings. This boat right here, the sardine carrier, which is the first kit that I designed from these drawings in Dynamite Payson's book. Okay, I just bought it off the shelf and took it home, and I think I had to increase the size of the drawings to get to 1/87 to the scale of the boat. From that, I made various templates. These are templates that help form the hull. They go on what we call stations. The station is nothing more, if you picture yourself, the horizontal of the hull, you start at the bow of the stern, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The drawings in this book, I'll pass that around. The tab is on there. The drawings in that book will give you numbers. And then he'll give you a corresponding drawing for the curvature. Now you go take and you copy that, and then you go to the hull and you start filing. But now you got your hull is numbered as well, because your hull is made from the same drawings. That's how I did this hull. I'm guessing this might have taken me 3 or 4 months to do the hull, maybe a couple hours a day. It was a learning experience for me as well. Although when I was a kid, I did work for a short period of time at shipyard down in Quincy, Mass. They made a lot of Liberty boats down there. I did learn something about drawing, so it did help. But I'm not a nautical drawer at all.